South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected in New York later on today for the United States 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. And SABC News New York correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease joins us now with the latest update. Sherwin, great having you with us. So Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to arrive anytime today. Talk to us about what is on his UNGA schedule, as well as some of the discussions on the agenda. As we understand, this particular sitting will actually have a special focus on Africa.
Well, let me just tell you where the president is, Alicia. He is flying to the United States. We understand that the president will land here at around 10 a.m. New York time, which is around 4 p.m. South African time. We are told we will get a brief interaction with the president when he arrives here at the Manhattan Hotel, where he will spend the next 5 days. But to your question, in terms of the itinerary, it's a broad itinerary. The president will start tomorrow with an address, as you've mentioned, to the Summit of the Future. The Summit of the Future, very much this broad effort led by the United Nations Secretary General and UN member states, negotiating 3 key documents, including what they call a Pact for the Future, a digital compact that seeks to address the digital divide, the global digital divide in an era that's moving towards artificial intelligence and robotics. And then there's also a document called a Declaration for the Future, essentially the broad vision that member states see, an overarching document about what we need to do in terms of securing our future, given the complex challenges we face as a global society, from climate change, from the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, to peace and security, right? These intractable conflicts in the Middle East. We see the situation devolving in places like Sudan. Of course, the now long-standing war between Russia and Ukraine, very much key areas that need to be addressed by the collective. Because as you and I have talked about on so many occasions, the systems that were created by the United Nations in 1945, systems like the UN Security Council that has what's been described as a very destructive veto tool, is not fit for purpose in terms of addressing the challenges that we need to address today. Just to give you a sense of who's here with the president, he is accompanied by 5 ministers led by the International Relations and Cooperation Minister, Ronald Lamola. He's also accompanied by the Minister in the Presidency for Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Ramaphosa. And that's, of course, an important portfolio in terms of how the national jurisdiction that is South Africa implements the very technical aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals. So she really is a key minister in terms of overseeing all government departments in terms of their responsibilities, their input in implementing the SDGs. Parks Tau is here. He's just come from Washington, D.C., the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. And, of course, the big element as part of this UN trip is also engaging with U.S. business, trade and investment, addressing issues on unemployment, addressing issues of foreign direct investment that meets the moment, right? You heard Minister Lamola speak also in Washington, D.C. last week about the need for investors to invest in industrialization, invest in beneficiation, so that you don't just see the extraction of minerals from countries like South Africa that do not then benefit the communities from where those minerals are taken. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the Minister of Health, is here. There is a high-level meeting on pandemic preparedness, and he will also be supporting President Ramaphosa, who is the chair of the Global Leaders Network, Alicia, on women's, children's and adolescent health. So there'll be a meeting on that. And, of course, the meeting on pandemic preparedness. Let's not forget where we come from as a society. Just a few years, you had a pandemic called COVID-19 sprawling across the world, killing millions of people. And so the world is seeking to come together with a plan, a rules-based society in terms of how you prepare and what sort of elements will be ready for whatever the next pandemic will be. The president will also have a roundtable on Monday, Alicia, dealing with navigating the new landscape of African minerals. I just saw Ambassador Nozipho Mkhathatho Diseko arrive here at the hotel. She, of course, is the chair of a new advisory panel to the Secretary General, looking at how there's going to be a race for the minerals we need for an artificial and robotics and a greener economy, things like copper, cobalt. All these rare minerals that you're going to see a race for in terms of the transition to a greener economy. And the point they're trying to make is creating ethical guardrails about how we ensure that it's not just going to be an extraction of these minerals, but how we do that in a coordinated way so that places and rural communities benefit from that business. He will also, of course, address the UN General Debate on Tuesday. Of course, he'll present, as he annually does, the general statement. And then there's also a meeting to deal with the G20. There's a high-level meeting of the G20. The Secretary General will be there. The outgoing chair of the G20, President Lula of Brazil, will speak there. And then, of course, the incoming chair of the G20, President Cyril Ramaphosa, will also speak. So the G20, a very interesting place to look at in terms of the economic transition that the world is facing now as we move towards South Africa's chairmanship of the G20. So a sprawling agenda over the next 5 days. We're hoping also to have a sit-down with the president at the conclusion of his visit here on Wednesday. So a lot to play for, a lot on the card, and certainly a busy few days, Alicia, for all of us.
Absolutely, and quite critical meeting to note also after the formation of the Government of National Unity this side, Sherwin. So very interesting, and understand SABC News will, of course, be carrying those particular debates. So in terms of the US, who's going to be representing the US? Is it Joe Biden or Kamala Harris? And I suppose the same question goes for Russia as well.
Well, it's going to be Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister. Vladimir Putin doesn't really come to the United States that often, and so the foreign minister, the long-standing foreign minister of Russia, will lead the Russian delegation, which is kind of traditional now. And then for the United States, President Joe Biden will be delivering his final address to the UN General Assembly. In fact, the United States traditionally speaks second, right after Brazil, in that general debate. So you have the President of the General Assembly, you then have the Secretary General, then you have Brazil, and then Biden will deliver his final address. We also understand there's going to be a sort of farewell dinner among heads of state and government here for the outgoing President of the United States. And yes, there's been so many questions about whether Kamala Harris will put in an appearance in New York. We certainly haven't heard that. There's been absolutely no confirmation that the current Vice President of the United States and the Democratic nominee for President will be making an appearance here. This will be Biden's moment. This will be Biden's goodbye to member states. Kamala Harris, as we understand it, will be campaigning heavily. Of course, this is a very tight race with the Republican nominee, Donald Trump. The polls show a very tight race nationally. They show her in the lead in a number of swing states. So I think her focus is very much on the domestic side of things right now, while Biden will deal with kind of the international aspects that are prevalent and prevalent at the UN General Assembly here in New York.
Thank you so much, Sherwin. We'll certainly touch base with you as soon as you have the president in your sights. That is Sherwin Bryce-Pease, the SABC News correspondent, live to us from New York.